How's it going, everybody? Hope everyone's doing well and staying safe and healthy as always. Another week in the books. A little bit about what I've been up to. Honestly, same old. Just been studying and working and staying busy that way. I've been recently able to start a new book. So I went ahead and started The Secret Lives of Colors by Clarissa St. Ives. It's a color theory book that's also kind of like a doubles as a anthropological study. It goes into the color spectrum and how every different color has its own cultural and social significance throughout history, while also kind of explaining color theory a little bit as the book unfolds. Definitely recommend it if you're creative, if you're a designer, or if anybody who actually just enjoys color. Definitely a good book. So we can go ahead and get started on the assignment. I went ahead and chose Charles Ives for my composer report. A little bit about Charles Ives. He was born in 1874 in Danbury, Connecticut, and he's actually notorious for mixing European and American traditional music styles. And his innovations basically like modernized rhythm, harmony, tone, and form for America as a whole, for American music as a whole. And he actually was on a mission and he sought out to produce compositions that reflected American society and current American events um, during his time. So that's pretty interesting. He is now regarded as one of the fathers of American art music, just because of his influence during the early 20th century and how important that time was just in terms of American music history in general. So he's kind of a prolific figure in American music. Um, I have some unusual aspects of his career that some might not know about. He was professionally trained in composition and as an organist, but he actually spent 30 years of his life as an insurance agent. And during that time, he kind of not gave up composing, but he kind of almost made it like his side hustle. He did it on his free time, and it wasn't until after those 30 years that he was able to kind of fully dedicate his time to fully compose and kind of put out music. And it was around that moment where he was kind of starting to take composing a little bit more seriously that he would get discouraged very easily. And he actually was stated he actually he was noted stating that a lot of his inspiration and a lot of the courage that he had to be able to kind of push musical boundaries came from his wife Melody and her strong faith in him to be able to actually fully pursue composing as a full-on career. So I thought that was pretty interesting. um, in his work, he actually really tried to capture individual emotion and memory. So a lot of his early work, especially, is compositions that are inspired by a lot of memories he actually had with his dad at a young age, and you can hear that in like the Fourth of July, as he drew a lot of inspiration from hearing like the town band, or maybe it's like I have here, like the St. Gaudens in Boston Common, where the American Civil War was going on, and he just remembers the a lot of the commotion and a lot of like the hostility that he kind of experienced in that time of his life, and he tried to express that through that piece. Um, and some happier memories, where he remembers going and camping with his dad, and going and spending a lot of time in nature, and you can hear that in Symphony Number 3 and the Violin Sonata Number 4. So I thought that was also pretty interesting. Um, Other than that, I went ahead and chose the Rock Strewn Hills, Join the People's Outdoor Meeting by him. And this piece was composed between the years of 1909 and 1915. And this is actually kind of like a pivotal point in his career, because this is when he's starting to like really first start setting off on his journey as a full-on composer. And this is what a lot of people call his mature era, because he takes a lot of inspiration from romantic era music and church hymns from this time, but he's just barely starting to like break those thresholds into American modern music, and using that expressionistic mindset to kind of push the boundaries a little bit more. So you hear a little bit of both. You hear that romantic influence, but towards the end of the piece, you almost get a completely different sound and a completely different song, and it almost ends up in a completely different era. So I think that's kind of interesting. You get that duality, and it almost takes you as a transition from the romantic era to the modern era. So I think that was pretty cool. It actually happens quite suddenly. The song starts with a romantic sound, classic symphony, and instruments being played like how they would in any other romantic composition. And it's around the 2 minute mark where the discontent actually picks up, and it's almost like super sudden. It's like almost someone flips a switch, or someone just makes the whole symphony just fly into frenzy, because the song just becomes completely sporadic, and it's pantonal in the fact that all the families and all the instruments that are used in this song are played in equal volumes at they're given equal attention, and the spotlight's pretty much distributed amongst all of them, and you have sounds and melodies just coming at you from different directions. And on top of that, there really isn't any set tempo. There is at the beginning. There's like a soft like thump and snare from the bass and snare, but after the 2 minute mark, that almost goes completely out the window, and everything kind of just picks up in like a downward spiral basically at this point. There's ascending and descending scales, and there's a lot of expressionism, and there's a lot of interpretation that you have to kind of use in order to kind of listen to the second half of the piece and kind of understand it. And how I take it is that it's like almost like a subjective interpretation of a set in concrete memory. Just like how the title explains, it's this basically outdoor meeting, and he basically paints the whole scene for you, but how the scene plays out, it basically is up to you, and you can kind of almost decide what happens in this scene just by like you kind of interpreting how the music sounds, and how all these instruments amalgamate to make this whole work, this complete work. And other than that, I would probably say like you can probably hear a lot of the hymnal, romantic, symphonic influence at the beginning, but then towards the end you have like this almost ragtimey early jazz sound that you can almost kind of pick up. And I think it's interesting because I've never really heard both in the same song before. So I think it's kind of like a cool like mixture. It's very abstract that way, but at the same time it's pretty easy to kind of classify the two, almost the four different genres that are laid out in front of you and almost utilized at different points and mixed together at different points of the song. And other than that, I mean, I think it's a very, very, very well written song. I think there's a lot of like time and effort that you can tell that went behind him kind of painting this memory for us. So I definitely recommend you check it out and listen to it, and kind of just see for yourself what you can kind of take away from the piece, because I'm sure someone will definitely take something just completely different than what I took away from that piece. So definitely recommend that piece, and I think I can definitely consider myself a Charles Ives fan from here on out, just by his expressionism and all of that. So I think he's top of the list for me. But other than that, hope everyone's doing well again, and hope everyone has a great week and a great weekend. So until then, see you guys later.